Wyatt heard the van before he saw the gun. It crawled past Blackstone Bar with its lights half dimmed, engine growling low, like it was stalking something. The kind of sound that made the bottles on the outdoor tables tremble and set something cold crawling up his spine. He kept his head down and his broom moving, pushing cigarette butts and crushed cans into a loose pile near the trash. The neon beer signs painted his torn hoodie in shifting colors. Red, green, blue, making him look like he belonged to the lights instead of the street. His fingers were numb inside fingerless gloves. The ache in his stomach had moved past hunger into that hollow float he'd learned to ignore 3 months ago, back when foster home number 7 had decided he was too much trouble, back when his stepfather's fists had taught him that some doors only open one way. Out. 12 weeks living under the highway. 15 Bridge had turned Wyatt into a student of patterns. He knew which fast food dumpsters got emptied on Tuesdays, which gas station bathrooms stayed unlocked after midnight, which police cruiser routes to avoid between 2 and 4 in the morning. He'd learned that survival wasn't about being smart. It was about being invisible, about making yourself so small that even the shadows forgot you were there. 2 weeks ago, he'd found this spot outside Blackstone Bar, the place where the Iron Ravens motorcycle club gathered after sundown. At first, he'd only been looking for bottles. Colorado had a 5-cent redemption and drunk bikers dropped change like confetti. But then he'd seen her, the little girl in the too big helmet, Nora. 6 years old, maybe 7, chin strap dangling loose because her father's hands were too big and rough to manage the tiny buckle. She'd been stomping out some clumsy dance while a jukebox inside bled classic rock into the parking lot. Her boots were red, shiny, the kind that lit up when she jumped. Behind her, the big man with the leather vest had tried not to smile too wide, failed completely. The back of his cut spread across his shoulders like a war banner. A white-winged skull, Iron Ravens curved above it. Everyone called him Ironside. Wyatt had heard the name shouted across the lot enough times to know it meant respect. Fear sometimes, but mostly respect. That first night, Wyatt had watched Ironside reach out and steady Nora with one hand while using the other to tuck her hair behind the helmet strap. For one heartbeat, his face had softened completely, every hard line smoothing out as he kissed the top of that ridiculous pink helmet like it was made of glass. Wyatt had looked away then. Some things hurt worse than an empty stomach. But he'd come back the next night, and the night after that. Not for the bottles anymore. Not really. He'd started sweeping without anyone asking, picking up the broken glass that clustered near the bike stands. That first time a shard the size of his thumb had been lying right where Nora's red boots would skip by. He'd moved it, then kept sweeping. The night after, he'd noticed a nail sticking up from a pallet someone had left near the entrance. He'd pried it out with a rock, smoothed the wood down with his shoe. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever noticed Wyatt Reeves. That was the whole point of being invisible. But each night he'd found himself scanning the parking lot before Nora arrived. Glass there, oil slick there, loose gravel where she might trip. He'd clear it all away, like preparing a path for someone who mattered, someone worth protecting. He didn't know why. Maybe because she was small and the world wasn't kind to small things. Maybe because watching Ironside love her so fiercely made something in Wyatt's chest ache. Maybe because for his 2 weeks keeping this little girl safe from things she'd never see had been the only thing that made him feel like he existed. Except tonight felt different. Tonight, the black van had already made 2 passes, slow ones, the kind that set off alarms in the part of Wyatt's brain that had kept him alive this long. He'd seen this before, back when Robert Crane used to hunt him through the neighborhood in that rusted pickup truck. The way predators moved when they had already picked their target. Patient, deliberate, just waiting for the right moment to strike. The first time the van rolled by, Wyatt had tensed. Old habits. His shoulders had drawn up toward his ears, and his eyes had tracked the vehicle's path without moving his head. Driver's window cracked just enough to flick an ash. A red spark tumbling to the pavement. Inside Blackstone, someone had shouted over the music. A woman's voice warm with laughter, the kind of sound that came from people who belonged to each other. The second time the van came around, it moved slower. Wyatt had been close enough to the line of motorcycles then to let their chrome bodies stand between him and the street. Each polished tank caught the neon and threw it back in broken streaks. He tried to warn one of the bikers, an older guy smoking near the entrance, leather vest decorated with patches. "That van," Wyatt had said quietly, not making eye contact. "Never make eye contact. It's been circling." The biker had glanced at him. Through him, really. The way most people looked at homeless kids. "Paranoid kid," the man had said, and gone back to his cigarette. Wyatt had returned to his broom, to being invisible. He was good at that. Inside the bar, Nora's giggle cut through the bass-heavy music, bright and clear. Wyatt glanced up just long enough to see her through the open doorway. Ironside was teaching her how to throw darts. Her tiny arm could barely reach the board, but she was trying. Face scrunched up in concentration. Ironside stood behind her, guiding her elbow. His hand completely dwarfed hers. A woman appeared beside them. Laurel. She set down a basket of fries and ruffled Nora's hair before pressing a quick kiss to Ironside's bearded cheek. Family. Wyatt had been protecting that picture for 2 weeks now. Moving glass, smoothing gravel, making the world a little safer for red boots and pink helmets. Not because anyone asked, but because some things deserve to be kept safe. The van turned into the parking lot. Wyatt's chest went tight. He recognized the pattern. Vehicles didn't creep through motorcycle club parking lots at midnight with their lights half off unless somebody inside had already made a decision. A bad one. The side door quivered, just enough for the metal to catch the fluorescent glare from the gas station next door. He dropped the broom. The clatter vanished under the hum of engines and the muffled drum of bass from inside. He could have turned away, could have stepped back into the shadow between the dumpster and the wall, folded himself into the kind of small that had kept him breathing under bridges. Nobody would have noticed. Nobody ever had. But for 2 weeks he'd been standing guard over something precious. And tonight the danger he'd been watching for had finally arrived. The side door slid open. Cold metal caught the light, and the night snapped. 5 muzzle flashes tore the parking lot into pieces. The first shot blew out the neon sign above the door. Green glass showered down. The second shoot into a row of motorcycles, chrome screaming as mirrors exploded. Screams erupted from inside Blackstone. The third, fourth, and fifth bullets lined up with the doorway, where Nora stood, helmet crooked, eyes wide, frozen. Wyatt moved. He didn't sprint like a movie hero. His body lurched forward, every bone protesting. His mind emptied, burned clean by one thought. Forward. The world narrowed to the tiny girl's outline and the black holes at the end of the gun. He hit her like a crash. His shoulder slammed into her chest. The breath whooshed out of her as he twisted midair, flipping their bodies so his back faced the van and she fell beneath him. The impact with the threshold drove the air from his lungs. Then the bullets found him. The first hit low in his side, a hammer made of fire. The second punched into his back higher, somewhere near his shoulder blade, detonating white pain. The third slammed into the same torn hoodie already soaked with the first 2. The fourth and fifth were different. He didn't feel them as separate hits, just a crushing weight that pinned him to the doorway. Bones rattling, ears ringing, the taste of blood sharp and metallic. His hands scrabbled for purchase, fingers finding the edge of Nora's helmet and pushing it down over her face. "Don't move," he rasped. "Stay small. Stay down." He'd given himself that same order 1,000 times. Tonight he finally understood what it meant to say those words for someone else. The van's engine roared, but as it fishtailed, tires screaming, Wyatt's vision blurred and focused on one thing through the broken windshield. A face he knew. Derek Crane, his stepfather's younger brother. The same Derek who'd sworn revenge when Wyatt's abuse report got Robert investigated 6 months ago, who'd cornered him behind the school and said, "You destroyed our family, you little shit." We don't forget. This wasn't random. This was personal. The recognition hit harder than the bullets. They hadn't come for the bikers. They'd come for him. And Nora had been standing right where Robert Crane's brother had aimed. The van disappeared into the dark, the engine roaring, shrinking as the vehicle tore down the street. Silence crashed back. Boots pounded concrete. Voices overlapped. Someone yelling for an ambulance. Glass crunched under heavy steps. Hands grabbed at his hoodie trying to pull him off Nora. They slipped, came away red. "What the? Don't touch him!" The big man with the winged skull appeared above Wyatt, dropping to his knees. His eyes were wild and wild, his vest hanging open. Nora crawled out from under Wyatt's arm, helmet askew, cheeks streaked with tears. "He pushed me, Daddy," she sobbed. He took it." Ironside looked down, really looked. For a second, Wyatt saw what everyone else always saw. A dirty kid in a ruined hoodie. A nobody. A ghost. Then Ironside's gaze dropped to the spreading pool of blood, to the way Wyatt's body still curled protectively around his daughter even as it shook. Something in his face broke. "Oh, God," he whispered. "Oh, kid." His hands pressed into Wyatt's side. Pain exploded, hot and white. Wyatt bit down on a cry and tasted more blood. "Stay with me," Ironside ordered, voice cracking. "You hear me? You took our bullets." Wyatt's vision tunneled. Somewhere beyond the doorway, engines were starting, one after another. "That makes you ours." Wyatt tried to answer, to tell the man about Derek, about Robert, about how this was Wyatt's fault, his past catching up, his stepfather's revenge finding him even here. Nothing came out but a ragged wheeze, a leather vest bunched under his head. Nora's small hand caught his fingers, squeezing with desperate strength. Sirens wailed. Drawing closer, red and blue began to strobe against the bar's shattered front. Wyatt's world shrank to three sensations: the crushing pressure on his wounds, the tiny hand holding his, and the thunder of engines lining up just beyond his fading vision. For the first time in his life, Wyatt wasn't sure if the sound of people coming for him meant danger or something else entirely. The ambulance felt smaller than the alley he used to sleep in. Wyatt stared up at the vibrating metal ceiling, every bump sending fresh shocks through his side and shoulder. Someone had cut his hoodie open. Cold air on bare skin while heat burned deep under the bandages. A monitor beeped beside his head. Speeding up, slowing when his vision tunneled. His fingers twitched against the mattress, searching for something to hold on to. The memory of tiny fingers in his palm. Nora's hand. They'd let her climb in just long enough to squeeze his before loading him up. Now her handprint felt burned into his skin. "Pressure's barely holding," the older paramedic muttered, sweat on his forehead. "We're losing it." "I'm trying," the younger one snapped. "Kids half our size and carrying more lead than body armor. Eyes on his airway." Wyatt's gaze rolled sideways. Through the narrow strip of glass in the back doors, he caught broken images. Headlights stacked in tight formation, chrome glinting. The sound of engines wasn't behind them anymore. It was everywhere, surrounding the ambulance. "They're still with us," the younger paramedic said. "Every one of them," the older replied. "Whole damn club's riding escort." Wyatt tried to speak. His throat felt raw. He'd never had anyone follow him. Most people only noticed him long enough to tell him to move along. Now an entire storm of steel and leather was pacing every turn. His chest tightened. "Hey," the older paramedic leaned close. "You still with me, kid?" Wyatt managed a tiny nod. Pain shot up his neck. "You did something tonight. Most grown men wouldn't. You gave that little girl a chance to grow up." The words bounced around his head, colliding with memories of police reports that went nowhere. of Ms. Brennan saying out of our hands, of sleeping under overpasses while cars flew by overhead. He blinked hard, tears burning tracks through the grime. Don't, his voice cracked, don't let them take her. Nobody's taking her. Her old man's not the type to let go. The paramedic glanced toward the doors. Neither are his friends. The pain surged in waves, rolling up from his side, cresting in his chest. Wyatt clenched his jaw, trying not to scream. Pressure dropping, the younger one said, panic creeping in. Less than 2 minutes out. We're not hitting a red, the older one said. Not tonight. Through the glass, Wyatt saw why. The bikes had surged ahead, fanning out at the intersection. Engines roaring as riders blocked cross traffic. Bodies in chrome forming a barricade. Cars stopped dead. Drivers staring as the Iron Ravens turned a Denver street into a private corridor. The ambulance shot through. Hospital floodlights exploded into view. Then the doors burst open. Cold night air, boots on asphalt, voices rising. Gunshot victim, multiple entry wounds, teen male, critical. Automatic doors yawning, nurses rushing. A security guard stepping back when he saw the wall of bikers behind the ambulance. Engine still running. A hand landed on the gurney rail, big and calloused. Wyatt turned his head, saw Ironside, keeping pace, vest half zipped, face carved with new lines. Blood dried on his hands. I'm right here, Kid, Ironside said, breathless. You're not doing this alone. Wyatt tried to answer. All he could see was the man's patch, that winged skull, and the smear of blood where those hands had tried to hold Wyatt's life inside his body. They hit a corner too fast. The gurney tipped, righted. Pain flared like lightning. Vitals are crashing. The hallway ceiling stretched out above him, fluorescent lights flickering past. Each one marking another second, his body had to decide whether to hold on or let go. They burst through swinging doors into a bright freezing room, hands multiplied, cutting away clothes, taping tubes. All the places where he hurt blurred into a single howling point. Kid, Ironside's voice near his ear. You stay. You understand. You stay. Wyatt's eyes rolled toward him. For a second, the chaos thinned. He saw the man clearly. The gray in his beard, the old scars. The fear etched deep. Why? Wyatt whispered. Ironside blinked hard. Because you stepped in front of hell for my family. His voice cracked. That makes you mine. That makes you ours. A mask descended over Wyatt's face. Oxygen blasted in. He wanted to argue, to say nobody kept him. But the machine screamed, and whatever words he might have found drowned in the noise. Take him! Now, on 3! The gurney lurched. Wyatt thought he heard Nora's voice somewhere distant, or maybe he just wanted to. The last thing he saw was the waiting room. Leather vests filling every chair, nurses frozen, watching a world they didn't understand invade theirs. Nora's helmet in her lap, chin trembling, eyes locked on his drifting form, her mother's arm around her shoulders. The gurney pivoted, then the doors to surgery swallowed him. The lights above the operating table seemed further away than the stars he used to count through cracks in the overpass. Voices muffled. Someone said 5 entry wounds. Someone else answered, if he makes it. He tried to lift his hand. It felt like lifting the whole city. One of the faces came into focus. Tired eyes, mask hiding everything but determination. You picked one hell of a family to save Kid, the surgeon murmured. Let's see if we can give them a reason to keep you. Cold washed through Wyatt's veins, a tide pulling him away. Somewhere beyond the doors, 80 motorcycles idled, refusing to leave. Wyatt's eyes fluttered once. Then the world went black, and the knife made its first cut. Nora counted the cracks in the waiting room floor until the numbers stopped meaning anything. Cheap tiles the color of old teeth. Thin black lines running between them like roads that didn't lead anywhere she wanted to go. Her boots didn't reach the ground from the plastic chair. They swung in tiny arcs, tapping out a rhythm that didn't match the distant beeping behind the double doors. Her helmet sat in her lap, pink shell smeared with dirt and a faint brown streak where Wyatt's blood had brushed it. Across from her, two nurses whispered. One kept glancing at the glass entrance, where the Iron Ravens had turned the hospital front into a barricade. Rows of bikes gleamed under floodlights. The rumble from idling engines seeped through the walls, a low, constant growl. Her dad couldn't sit. Ironside paced, boots thudding, his cut hanging open, dried flecks of red still marked the leather. Every few laps he passed the window to the surgical corridor, eyes raking the closed doors. Men in vests filled every spare chair, patches and tattoos in violent contrast to the pastel fish painted on the pediatric wing walls. "What are they doing here?" a mother whispered. "Guarding somebody," one of the nurses answered. "That homeless kid, I think." Nora's fingers tightened around her helmet. "He's not homeless," she muttered, too quiet for them to hear. "He's Wyatt." Her mother sat beside her, one arm around Nora's shoulders, the hand trembling even though her voice stayed even. "He's going to make it. You hear me? He's strong." Nora had never seen her dad look afraid. She'd seen him angry, happy, but afraid was new. It sat on him like a wet jacket. He stopped pacing when the door swung open. A detective in a rumpled suit stepped out, flanked by a uniformed officer. They both paused at the sight of the waiting room, taking in the wall of leather. The detective swallowed, then walked up to Ironside. "Morrison, Mr. Morrison, right?" Ironside's eyes were flat. "That's what they call me. I'm Detective Carver. We need a statement on what happened at Blackstone, and we need to talk about the boy's status." "His status is he's in there fighting for his life," Ironside said. "That's all the status that matters tonight." Carver shifted. "We'll need his full name, any known relatives, prior addresses." He told the EMTs his name, Wyatt, no last name that belonged to him anymore. Carver sighed. "Look, I'm not your enemy, but whoever was in that van didn't spray bullets at random. They aimed at the door. They saw your colors." He paused. "With that many bikes outside, this hospital's a target until that kid can talk." Silence rolled over the room. Ironside stepped closer, the skull on his back catching the light. "You want to protect this hospital, good. So do we. Nobody here gets hurt because of what I wear." He jerked his chin toward the doors. "But let me make one thing clear. You touch that kid without me, without her." He nodded at Laurel. "You'll have a different kind of problem." Carver measured him, then nodded. "Fine. We coordinate." He lowered his voice. "But we got word from patrol. Your shooters didn't just vanish. A black van was seen circling 2 blocks from here before we locked the streets down." Nora's stomach dropped. "They're coming here," she whispered. Her mother's arm pulled her closer. "They won't get in." Outside, thunder rolled. One by one, more bikes arrived, headlights spearing the night. Chapters from neighboring towns filing in with solemn faces. Time folded strangely. Minutes stretched, snapped. A nurse came out twice. "He's still in surgery. They're doing everything they can." At some point, coffee appeared. Someone draped a blanket over Nora's shoulders. A biker she didn't know, older with silver in his braid, knelt in front of her. "Kid," he said gently, "you hanging in?" She nodded. "You remember this. Whatever happens tonight, you remember he stepped in front of you because he decided you were worth it. That's not a debt this club takes lightly." The doors stayed shut. Midnight bled into something past it. The television cycled to local news. Then a familiar image flickered. Phone footage of the hospital parking lot. The caption, "Biker Gang Blocks ER." Nora watched as a shaky zoom caught the line of Harleys. The voiceover was accusatory. "They make it sound like we're the bad ones," Nora whispered. Ironside snorted. "They always do, till they need us." "But we saved someone. Wyatt saved me." Ironside's shoulders tightened. All the layers he wore seemed to fall away. He turned just enough for Nora to see his face, lined and tired. "Yeah," he said quietly. He did. The swing doors finally opened. Every conversation died. A man in blue scrubs stepped out, cap pushed back, mask hanging loose, a streak of something dark on his sleeve, eyes that looked like they hadn't closed in days. "Family for Wyatt," he called. The word hit like a thrown brick. Family. Ironside was moving before anyone else could process it. He crossed the distance, the room rising around him, vests scraped chairs, the iron ravens closed in behind him, forming a half circle. "We're here," Ironside said. The surgeon took them all in. The patches, the ink, the hard faces, and the little girl clutching a pink helmet. Something cautious flickered in his expression. Then it softened. He made it through surgery. The words hung like smoke. It was difficult. 5 entry wounds, significant blood loss. One bullet shattered a rib. Another missed his spine by less than a centimeter. He paused. If any of them had been an inch to the left or right, we'd be having a very different conversation. Nora didn't realize she'd stopped breathing until her lungs burned. "But he's alive," Ironside said. "For now, the next 48 hours are critical. Infection, swelling, organ failure. There's a lot that can still go wrong." He shook his head. "But the fact that he's still fighting after what he took, he's a tough kid." A sound rippled through the room. Half exhale, half choked laugh. Nora felt her knees go weak. "Can we see him?" she blurted. The doctor glanced at her, then at Ironside. "One at a time, immediate family only, ICU rules." Ironside hesitated. He doesn't have paperwork, no legal guardians, no parents that didn't lose the right to be called that. He straightened. "But he took bullets meant for my daughter. That makes him mine in every way that matters." Something like resolve settled over the doctor's features. "Then tonight, that's good enough for me." He gestured down the hall. "You and her, 5 minutes. Don't touch the tubes or monitors." He's sedated, but sometimes they know who's there. Nora slid off the chair. Her legs felt rubbery, but they carried her forward beside her father. The hallway was quieter, lights dimmer, air thicker with disinfectant and something metallic. Doors lined the corridor, each with tiny windows showing fragments of broken people. The doctor stopped at one near the end. Inside, a single monitor cast green light across a narrow bed. Nora's heart climbed into her throat. From the doorway she saw Wyatt. He looked smaller without his hoodie, swallowed by white sheets and wires. Bandages wrapped his chest and side stain where bleeding hadn't fully stopped. A tube in his nose, another from his arm to a bag overhead. His skin the color of paper left in the sun too long. For a second, Nora couldn't move. The boy who had crashed into her like a shield looked fragile enough that a strong breeze might carry him away. "Go on," Ironside murmured. "He didn't do all that so you could stand in the hallway." She forced her feet forward until she was beside the bed. Up close, she could see tiny freckles on his nose, the faint shadow of a bruise along his jaw, his lashes dark against his cheeks. "Hey," she whispered. The monitor kept its slow, stubborn beep. "It's me, Nora, the one who almost got you killed." Ironside made a soft sound but didn't correct her. "You didn't have to do that. You didn't even know my name." Wyatt's fingers lay limp on the sheet. Without thinking, she slid her smaller hand into his. Careful of the tape and IV, his skin was cool, but there was warmth underneath, like embers under ash. "Dad says family is who stands in front of you when everything goes bad. So I guess that means you're stuck with us now." For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then Wyatt's thumb twitched against her palm. It could have been a spasm, a reflex, but Nora's breath caught and the monitor line jerked. A tiny blip. She looked up at her father, eyes wide. Ironside stared at their joined hands, his jaw flexing. Outside, beyond the ICU walls, the engines of 80 motorcycles revved in unison. The first thing Wyatt thought when he woke up was that the world had gotten louder. The second was that breathing hurt less than it used to. The pain was still there, a deep, bruised ache in his side and shoulder, but it no longer felt like fire. Instead, it was a heavy throb, like his body reminding him it still existed. The ceiling above him wasn't concrete. It was clean white tile, light filtered in gentle and gray from a window. He blinked. The room smelled like antiseptic, layered over something warm, leather. A vest hung over the nearby chair, wing skull patch half visible, the front stained brown where blood had dried. His blood. Hey, the voice was rough, like gravel washed by rain. Wyatt turned his head carefully. Ironside sat in the chair, elbows on his knees, big hands steepled. He looked different out of the chaos, more tired, more human. But there was still that dangerous weight in how he held himself. His eyes, though, when they met Wyatt, softened. "You picked one dramatic way to introduce yourself, kid," Ironside said. Wyatt tried to answer and coughed instead. His throat felt sandpapered. Ironside was on his feet in a second, reaching for the cup on the tray. He adjusted the bed-raising Wyatt, then held the straw to his lips with a carefulness that didn't match the skull on his chest. Water hit Wyatt's tongue, cold and miraculous. He took small sips, every swallow sending ripples of pain through his chest, but he welcomed them. Pain meant he hadn't disappeared. "How long?" Wyatt croaked. "3 days. You've been in and out, mostly out." Ironside sat back down, body still leaning forward, ready to spring up again. "I didn't," Wyatt's voice broke. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Ironside huffed something like a laugh. "Trouble was already there, kid. You just stepped between it and my family." The memory hit in fragments. Neon shattering. The van, Nora's helmet, the impact, and the face through the windshield. Derek. "It was him," Wyatt said suddenly. "The shooter. I saw him." Ironside went very still. "You saw who?" "Derek Crane, my stepfather's brother." The words tumbled out. "Robert used to beat me. For years. I finally reported it 6 months ago. They investigated, but nothing stuck. Derek swore he'd make me pay. Said I destroyed their family." Wyatt's hands trembled. "This wasn't about your club. They came for me. And Nora was standing right where—" "Stop." Ironside's voice cut through, not angry, firm. "You listen to me, kid. I don't care why they came. I don't care what they wanted. You stepped in front of my daughter. That's all that matters." "But no buts." Ironside leaned closer. "You think this changes anything. You think because some piece of shit with a grudge tried to kill you that makes you less, makes what you did less." He shook his head. "You're wrong." Wyatt blinked hard, tears burning. "She's okay," Ironside said, voice softening. "Not a scratch. She's been drawing on your walls for days. Nurses had to make a rule." Relief washed through Wyatt so intense it made his eyes sting. The door creaked. Nora slipped inside. Helmet under one arm, her other hand wrapped in her mother's. She stopped just inside the threshold, eyes going huge. "You're real," she whispered. "Last I checked," Wyatt rasped. She crept closer, each step hesitant. Up close, he could see she'd colored on the helmet, tiny wings on the sides. Her gaze flicked over the tubes and bandages. "You hurt," she said softly. "Yeah, but you don't, so I'm calling it a good deal." Laurel stood at the foot of the bed, fingers twisted together. "You don't know us. You didn't owe us anything." Wyatt thought of all the times he'd run, from shouting, from fists. Running had been his survival. "I did run," he said quietly. "Just toward instead of away this time." Silence settled. The monitor beeped. The heating unit hummed. Days bled together after that. Physical therapy started on day 4. A woman with kind eyes made him try to sit up, then stand, then take 3 steps. Each movement felt like being torn apart. He gritted his teeth and did it anyway. Nora visited every day. She'd read to him from books meant for younger kids. But Wyatt didn't care. Her voice was something solid to hold on to. On day 6, she brought her school artwork, a crayon drawing of the parking lot. But in her version, Wyatt had wings, actual angel wings spreading from his back as he stood between her and the van. Teacher said to draw a hero, Nora explained. I drew you. Wyatt stared at it until his vision blurred. I'm not a hero, he managed. You are to me, she said, and taped it to the wall. On day 8, Detective Carver came back. He sat in the chair and asked questions in a voice that tried to sound gentle. The van. You told the paramedics you'd seen it before. Wyatt nodded, twice, maybe 3 times, circling the bar. Did you see who was inside? Wyatt's throat tightened. I saw the shooter's face when the van was leaving. Derek Crane. He's my stepfather's younger brother. Carver's pen stopped moving. He looked up. Robert Hayes' brother. Yeah. Carver's expression darkened. I did the van, registered to a Derek Crane. But here's the part that's going to make your blood run cold. He leaned forward. Robert Hayes was released from county jail 3 days before the shooting. His assault charges got reduced. Restraining order expired. Wyatt's heart hammered. We think he's coordinating this from outside, Carver continued. Derek pulled the trigger. But Robert's calling the shots. This was revenge, Wyatt, for the abuse report, for getting him arrested. They wanted you dead. The room tilted. The good news is we've got traffic cam footage. Plates, we'll find them. Carver closed his notebook. The bad news is until we do, you're a witness, and witnesses make some people nervous. You think they'll come back. I think people who spray bullets into a biker bar to get to one kid aren't the type to leave loose ends. Carver stood. But between us and the Iron Ravens, you've got more protection than the governor. After he left, Wyatt stared at the ceiling. Robert was out there, planning, waiting, and Wyatt had brought that danger straight to the people trying to save him. On day 10, an older biker walked in, silver threaded through his braid, face mapped with scars. The patch on his vest said Flint. He pulled the chair close, sat down with the careful movements of someone whose body remembered old injuries. You don't know me, but I know you. Whole club does now. Wyatt said nothing. You're wondering why we're still here, why we haven't moved on. I figured you'd get bored, Wyatt admitted. Flint smiled, slow and sad. Kid, this club isn't about riding bikes. It's about who you stand in front of when hell comes calling. He leaned back. Ironside told you he's filing for guardianship. Wyatt nodded. You think that's charity? I don't know what it is, Wyatt said honestly. It's debt, the kind you can't pay back. You stepped in front of Nora. That little girl is the heart of this chapter. Every man out there would die for her, but you're the one who actually tried. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, a patch, a tiny winged skull. This is a prospect patch. It means you're learning, earning your way. He set it on the bedside table. Ironside wants you to have it. When you're ready. Wyatt stared at the patch. Why me? I'm nobody. Flint's expression shifted. Something harder underneath. You were nobody. Past tense. You became somebody the second you decided that little girl mattered more than your own life. He stood. You've got people now, Wyatt, whether you know what to do with them or not. On day 14, Ironside was there when the physical therapist declared him ready to try stairs. Wyatt gripped the railing with white knuckles, took each step like it might be his last. At the top, he was breathing hard, but standing. Good, Ironside said. Now come back down. Going down was worse. Every step jarred his ribs. Wyatt's vision swam, his knees wobbled. Ironside was there before he could fall, big hands steadying him. I got you, but you're doing the work. Wyatt made it to the bottom. That night he dreamed he was back under the bridge. Cold concrete, traffic overhead. In the dream he kept trying to leave, but every time he stood up, he was back where he started. He woke up screaming. Monitors went haywire. Nurses rushed in, but Ironside was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed, one hand on Wyatt's shoulder. You're here, not there, here, with us. Wyatt's chest heaved. Tears he'd been holding back for months finally broke through. They came in choking sobs that hurt his ribs. Ironside didn't move, didn't tell him to stop, just kept his hand there, solid, warm. When the storm finally passed, Wyatt lay back, exhausted. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will be gone, that I'll be back under that bridge. It matters, Ironside said, and it's not going anywhere. Neither are you. On day 16, Ms. Brennan walked in carrying a folder. Social worker, Child Protective Services. Wyatt's stomach dropped. He knew the script, the kind voice, the questions that cataloged all the ways you didn't fit, the paperwork that moved you from one temporary place to another. I'm here to talk about placement. You're 15, still a minor. We have programs, shelters. He's not going to a shelter, Ironside said from the doorway. Ms. Brennan looked up, took in the leather vest. Mr. Morrison, I understand you care about what happens to Wyatt, but placement decisions are made by the state. Then start the protocol for guardianship, Laurel said, stepping in behind her husband. Emergency custody first, then permanent. We're filing today. Ms. Brennan blinked. You want to take custody of a teenage boy you met 2 weeks ago? He saved our daughter's life. He bled on our floor. Laurel's voice didn't rise, but it hardened. He's not going into a system that already forgot about him once. Ms. Brennan looked at Wyatt. Is this what you want? Wyatt opened his mouth, closed it. Want felt like too big a word. I don't want to be alone anymore, he said finally. If that counts. Something in Ms. Brennan's expression shifted. She pulled papers from her folder. All right, let's do this properly. The paperwork took hours. Previous addresses. He listed the bridge, the alley, the overpass, each one a small humiliation. Emergency contacts. He left it blank until Ironside leaned over and wrote his own name. There was a line for Wyatt's signature, and another where it said legal guardian. Ironside took the pen, signed, Garrett Morrison, the letters bold and certain. Wyatt stared at it, his name, right next to Morrison, connected by ink that looked too dark to ever fade. This doesn't make me your dad, not yet. Maybe not ever if that's not what you want. But it makes you mine to protect, to feed, to keep safe. Wyatt's hands shook as he signed. For the first time, the lines on a page didn't feel like a trap. On day 18, everything changed. It was late, past midnight. The hospital had dimmed the lights. Wyatt was drifting in and out of medicated sleep when the alarm went off. Not his monitor, something in the hallway. Voices rose, sharp, urgent. He struggled to sit up. Through the window in his door, he saw movement. Men in hospital scrubs moving too quickly, too purposefully, but something was wrong. One of them had a tattoo creeping up his neck. Another walked like he'd spent time in a fight cage. Their eyes swept the hallway, hunting. Wyatt's blood went cold. He hit the call button. Once, twice, 3 times. A nurse burst in. What's... Those aren't orderlies, Wyatt said. Voice hoarse but certain. Look at their badges. Look at how they move. The nurse glanced through the window. Her face went pale. Security, she breathed into her radio. Code Silver. ICU wing. Possible infiltration. Everything happened fast after that. The hospital alarm changed pitch. Doors locked automatically. The men in fake scrubs realized they'd been made. One pulled a gun. Nurses screamed. Patients shouted. Security guards rounded the corner, weapons drawn. And then the Iron Ravens who'd been stationed in the waiting room came pouring down the hall like a flood. Wyatt watched through his window as chaos erupted. The fake orderlies tried to fight their way toward the ICU, toward him, but they were outnumbered. Gunfire. Someone screamed. Then Ironside was there, moving with lethal precision. He tackled one of the infiltrators, slammed him against the wall. Another biker wrench. Wyatt had learned his name was moved to help, but something about his positioning was wrong. He wasn't protecting Ironside's flank. He was exposing it. Time seemed to slow. One of the fake orderlies raised his gun, aimed at Ironside's back. Wrench saw it. Everyone saw it. But Wrench's hand twitched toward his own weapon. Not to help, to finish the job. The shot went wide, caught Ironside in the shoulder instead of the spine. He went down hard. "Wrench!" someone shouted. "What the hell?" But Wrench was already running, disappearing down the stairwell as security and bikers swarmed the infiltrators. The fake orderlies were subdued, arrested. One was wounded, another unconscious. But the damage was done. Ironside was bleeding, and one of their own had let it happen. Wyatt pressed his face against the glass, watching as they carried Ironside past his room. Their eyes met for a second. Ironside was pale, in pain, but he jerked his chin at Wyatt. A small nod. "I'm okay." But Wyatt knew this wasn't over. Robert Hayes had just moved his pieces closer, and someone inside the club was playing for the other side. The hospital became a fortress overnight. Police swarmed the building. The two captured infiltrators were hauled away in handcuffs. Their fake credentials were good enough to pass initial screening, but not good enough to fool Wyatt. Detective Carver showed up at dawn, exhausted, furious. He came to Wyatt's room first. "You saved lives tonight, kid. Those men were here for you. Had zip ties. A van waiting in the loading dock." Carver sat heavily in the chair. "If you hadn't spotted them, they'd have grabbed you, and we'd have found you in pieces somewhere outside city limits." Wyatt's hands trembled. "Ironside?" he asked. "Stable. Through and through shoulder wound. He'll be sore for weeks, but he's tough." Carver's expression darkened. "But we have a bigger problem." "Wrench?" "Yeah, your club brothers gave statements. All of them say the same thing. Wrench had a clear shot to take down the gunman targeting Ironside. Instead, he hesitated. Some say he was reaching for his own weapon, not to help." Carver pulled out his phone, showed Wyatt a photo. "We found this in Wrench's locker at the clubhouse. Burner phone, text going back 3 weeks. Wyatt read them, his blood turning to ice. "Kids in ICU, room 347, 2 guards, can be handled. Payment on delivery, $50,000, plus safe passage out of state. Ray says the job gets done or you don't get paid. No more delays. Ray, Robert Hayes." "Wrench sold you out," Carver said quietly. "Robert Hayes promised him $50,000 and a clean exit. All Wrench had to do was make sure you didn't survive the hospital." Wyatt felt sick. "Where is he now?" "In the wind, but we'll find him." Carver stood. "The question is what comes next. Robert Hayes is coordinating this from outside. We can't find him. He's using disposable phones, staying off grid. But he won't stop. Not until you're dead." "So what do I do?" Carver was quiet for a long moment. "We have an idea, but it's risky." 2 hours later, Wyatt sat in a room full of Iron Ravens. Ironside was there, arm in a sling, face pale but determined. Flint, Reverend Axel, a dozen others. Detective Carver stood at the head. "Here's the play. We leak information that Wyatt's being transferred to a different hospital. Make it look real. Ambulance, small escort, easy target." "You want to use the kid as bait," Flint said flatly. "I want to draw Robert Hayes out. He's been coordinating from the shadows, But if he thinks he has one clean shot at finishing this, he'll take it. We'll be ready. And if you're wrong, Ironside asked, then we've got an armored ambulance, 2 chase cars, and half your chapter riding escort. The kid will be safer than the president. Wyatt spoke up. I'll do it. Everyone turned. Wyatt, you don't have to, Ironside started. Yes, I do. Wyatt's voice was stronger than he felt. Robert Hayes tried to kill a 6-year-old girl to get to me. He turned one of your brothers against you. He shot you. He looked at Ironside. This doesn't end until he's caught. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being scared. Silence. Then Ironside nodded. All right, but we do this smart, and if anything goes sideways, we pull the plug. The plan was simple, too simple. Day 22. They'd announced the transfer for Dawn. Leak it through the hospital grapevine. Let it get back to Robert's network. Real ambulance, real route. But every exit covered. Snipers on rooftops, undercover units in civilian cars. The Iron Ravens would ride escort, visible, obvious, the perfect target. Wyatt spent the days leading up to it in a strange limbo. Physical therapy continued. Nora visited, drew pictures, read stories, but everyone knew what was coming. On day 25, Laurel brought real clothes, jeans, t-shirts, a jacket. Can't have you leaving in a hospital gown, she said. Wyatt touched the jacket. What if this doesn't work? Then we'll figure out plan B. She sat on the edge of his bed. But Wyatt, listen to me. Whatever happens, you're not alone in this. Not anymore. That night, Ironside stayed late. You're scared, he said. Not a question. Yeah. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Ironside leaned back. When I was 14, my old man broke 3 of my ribs. Told me I'd never be worth nothing. What changed? I did. Took people who saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. He looked at Wyatt. You remind me of that kid, the one I was before I figured out I was worth fighting for. What if you're wrong about me? Ironside tapped Wyatt's chest right over the heart. Then you wouldn't have stepped in front of those bullets. That thing inside you that made you move when everyone else froze, that's who you are. My job is to help you see it. Wyatt blinked hard. Burgers are burning, he said, even though there were no burgers. Ironside smiled. Let 'em burn. Day 27, the morning of the transfer. Wyatt was up before dawn. A nurse helped him dress. The clothes Laurel brought fit better now. He'd put on a few pounds. The prospect patch sat on the bedside table. He'd never picked it up. Now he reached for it, held it in his palm, the fabric heavier than he expected. The skull embroidered in white thread. He slipped it into his jacket pocket, not ready to wear it yet, but ready to carry it. The door opened, Ironside, arms still in a sling but eyes sharp. You ready? No, but let's do it anyway. They moved slowly down the hallway. Every few steps, Wyatt had to stop, catch his breath. Nobody rushed him. At the end of the corridor, the automatic doors stood waiting. Beyond them, an ambulance. And something else. The door slid open. Sound hit first. Not the roar of engines this time, but the rumble of idling bikes. Softer. Controlled. 80 motorcycles lined up with military precision. But this time they weren't celebrating. This time they were going to war. Wyatt stepped onto the ramp. The morning air was cold, clean, the sun just starting to break over Denver's skyline. Nora ran to him, wrapped her arms gently around his waist. Be careful, she whispered. I will. Laurel hugged him next. We'll be right behind you, every mile. They helped him into the ambulance. The paramedics from that first night were there. The older one nodded. Heard you spotted those fake orderlies. Smart kid. Lucky kid, Wyatt corrected. Same thing sometimes. The doors closed. Through the narrow window, Wyatt watched the Iron Ravens mount their bikes. Ironside leading even with his wounded shoulder. Flint beside him, the formation tightening. Carver's voice crackled over a radio in the ambulance. All units in position. Target route is clear. Snipers have eyes on every intersection. We're good to go. The ambulance started moving, slowly, deliberately. The bikes fell into formation around them, a moving shield. They rolled through Denver as the city woke up, past the bridge where Wyatt used to sleep, past the neighborhoods where he'd once been invisible. Now he was visible. By choice, The convoy moved onto the highway, the designated transfer route, 3 exits to the new facility. Carver's voice came through again. 2 vehicles matching the description. Black van, keeping pace 3 cars back. Wyatt's heart hammered. Hold formation, Carver said. Let them commit. The ambulance drove on. The van stayed back, waiting. Then everything went wrong. We've got a problem. Carver's voice was tight. The van's not moving. They're not taking the bait. Through the window, Wyatt saw Ironside's brake lights flare. The whole convoy was slowing. Then Carver again, shouting now. All units, we have a situation at County General. Shots fired. Repeat shots fired at the hospital. Wyatt's blood went to ice. They didn't take the bait, the younger paramedic said. They went for the hospital. Ironside's voice came through the radio, rough, furious. Where pediatric wing, 4th floor. We've got 1 gunman, maybe 2. They're asking for Wyatt Morrison by name. Nora, Wyatt grabbed the radio from the paramedic. Turn around, now. Kid, we can't. Turn around. The ambulance driver looked at the paramedic. The older one nodded. The ambulance hit the brakes. Hard. Made a U-turn across the median. The entire convoy followed. 80 motorcycles screaming back toward the hospital. Sirens wailing. Carver's voice. Wyatt, listen to me. Do not go in there. We have tactical teams. But Wyatt wasn't listening anymore. Robert Hayes hadn't taken the bait. He'd gone straight for what Wyatt cared about most. The hospital came into view. Smoke rising from one corner. Police cars everywhere. An ambulance. The convoy skidded to a stop. Ironside was off his bike before it fully stopped moving. Where, a cop pointed. 4th floor, pediatric wing, 2 shooters. They've got hostages. One of them is asking for Wyatt by name. Says if he doesn't come up, they start shooting kids. Wyatt stumbled out of the ambulance, his side screaming, vision swimming. Wyatt, no. Ironside grabbed his good arm. It's Nora up there, isn't it? Wyatt asked. Ironside's face said everything. Laurel had brought Nora back this morning for a follow-up appointment, therapy for the trauma. They'd been in the building when the shooting started. Now they were trapped. I'm going up, Wyatt said. Like hell you are, Ironside growled. You can barely stand. Then hold me up. Wyatt met his eyes. You said family is who stands in front of you when everything goes bad. That little girl stood by my hospital bed for 3 weeks. Now it's my turn. Silence. Then Ironside's jaw tightened. All right, but not alone. Carver appeared. This is insane. He's a civilian. He's wounded. He's the only leverage we have. Ironside cut in. They want him. He walks in, buys us time. Tactical team moves into position. We end this. Carver looked at Wyatt. You understand what you're walking into. Wyatt pulled the prospect patch from his pocket, looked at it one last time, then handed it to Ironside. Give this to Nora. Tell her I earned it. Then he turned toward the hospital entrance. Behind him, Flint's voice. That kid's got balls the size of engine blocks. Ahead, the automatic doors, the same ones he'd left through less than an hour ago. Now he was walking back in, toward the men who tried to kill him twice, toward his stepfather's revenge, toward the little girl who'd held his hand when he was dying. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt like drowning in slow motion. 2 cops rode with him. Weapons drawn, vests on, they'd cleared the floors below, evacuated who they could. But the pediatric wing was locked down. The shooters had barricaded the main corridor. The elevator dinged. The doors opened to chaos barely contained. Nurses huddled behind an overturned desk. Parents crying. A doctor with blood on his scrubs. And at the end of the hall, behind an overturned hospital bed and scattered medical equipment, two men with guns. One Wyatt didn't recognize. Tall, tattooed, Scorpion's MC patch on his vest. The other he knew too well. Derek Crane. Derek's eyes locked on Wyatt, a smile spreading across his face like a wound. There he is, the boy who destroyed everything. Wyatt's legs felt like water, but he forced himself forward. One step, then another. "Let them go," Wyatt said, voice barely steady. "You want me? I'm here." "Oh, we're not letting anyone go," Derek said. "Not until Uncle Robert gets here. He wants to see you before you die. Wants to explain exactly what you took from him." "Where is he?" "Close." Derek gestured with the gun. "Real close." In fact, a door behind them opened, and Robert Hayes stepped out. Wyatt's stepfather looked different, thinner, harder. Prison had carved new lines into his face, but his eyes, those were the same, cold, empty. "Hello, boy," Robert said. Wyatt couldn't breathe. "You thought you could destroy my life and just disappear." Robert walked closer, slowly. "You got me arrested, cost me my job, my house, 6 months in county because you couldn't keep your mouth shut about a little discipline." "You broke my arm," Wyatt said, voice shaking. "You beat me for years." "I tried to make you strong," Robert's voice rose. "Tried to make you into something worth keeping. But you were always weak, always crying, always running." He gestured to Derek, to the hospital. "So I took something from you. That little biker brat you threw yourself in front of. She's still here." Wyatt's vision went red. "Where is she, Derek?" Derek smiled, pointed to a room behind them. Through the window, Wyatt could see her. Nora, huddled with her mother and 3 other children in a corner. Laurel's arm around them all. Her eyes met Wyatt's through the glass. "Let them go," Wyatt said again. "This is between us." "You're right," Robert said. He raised his gun, pointed it at Wyatt's chest. "This is between us. But I think I'll let you watch first. Let you see what happens to people who care about you." He shifted his aim toward the room. Wyatt moved. Not like before. Not the desperate lurch of a boy with nothing to lose. This time he moved with purpose, with everything the Iron Ravens had taught him over 3 weeks. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, swung it hard, caught Robert in the shoulder. The gun went off, bullet going wide. Chaos erupted. The cops surged forward. Derek fired. Someone screamed. Wyatt tackled Robert. They went down hard. The impact sent agony through Wyatt's healing wounds. But he didn't let go. Robert's fist connected with Wyatt's jaw. Stars exploded. But Wyatt had survived Robert's fists for years. He knew how to take a hit. He knew how to fight back now. Wyatt drove his elbow into Robert's throat. Pinned him. 12 weeks of sleeping rough had made him lean. But those same weeks had also made him desperate. And desperate was dangerous. "You wanted to make me strong," Wyatt gasped. "Congratulations." It worked. Police swarmed them, pulled Wyatt off, handcuffed Robert even as he screamed. Derek was already down, tackled by 2 officers. The door to the children's room burst open, Laurel pulling the kids out. Nora broke free. Ran. She hit Wyatt like a small missile, arms wrapping around him. He nearly collapsed, but hands caught him. Ironside, supporting him, holding both of them up. "You stupid, brave, incredible kid," Ironside breathed. The tactical team swept in, secured the floor. Medics rushed to check the hostages. Wyatt's legs finally gave out. They lowered him to the floor. A paramedic checked him over. "You tore your stitches, reopened at least 2 wounds. You need surgery. Later, Wyatt managed. Nora was still clinging to him, shaking. You came back. Of course I did. But you were safe. You could have run. Wyatt touched her helmet, still pink, still too big. Yeah, but you're worth coming back for. Carver appeared, crouched down. Robert Hayes and Derek Crane are in custody. We've got them on attempted murder, conspiracy, enough to put them away for decades. He looked at Wyatt. You did good, kid. I couldn't let him hurt her. I know. Carver stood. Get him to surgery. We'll get statements later. They loaded Wyatt onto a gurney. Again. Ironside walked beside him. Again. But this time felt different. This time Robert was in handcuffs. Derek was going to prison. The threat was over. This time Wyatt had fought back and won. As they wheeled him toward the elevator, Nora pressed something into his hand. The prospect patch. Dad said you earned it, she whispered. So wear it, please. Wyatt closed his fingers around it. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I will. The second surgery was shorter than the first. They repaired the damage from his fight with Robert, closed the wounds that had torn, stopped the internal bleeding. When Wyatt woke up this time, the room was full. Ironside, Laurel, Nora, Flint. A dozen Iron Ravens crowded into a space meant for 3 people. You're awake, Ironside said. Relief plain on his face. How long? Just overnight. Doc says you'll make a full recovery again. He shook his head. You've got more lives than a cat. Robert. Arraigned this morning. No bail. Derek too. DA's pushing for maximum sentences. Ironside pulled up a chair. It's over, Wyatt. They can't touch you anymore. The words took a moment to land. Over. No more running, no more looking over his shoulder, no more Robert Hayes. Wrench, Wyatt asked. Caught trying to cross into New Mexico. He's talking. Gave up everything about Robert's plan. He'll do time, but less than he deserves. Flint stepped forward. We voted. Unanimously. Wrench is out. His patch is burned. He doesn't exist to us anymore. Wyatt nodded. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven. Over the next week, Wyatt healed. Again. Faster this time. Knowing the threat was over seemed to help. Nora visited every day, brought new drawings, told him about school, about the kids who wanted to meet the boy who fought the bad guys. On day 7, Ms. Brennan came back. The guardianship is approved, she said, handing papers to Ironside and Laurel. Emergency custody is now permanent. Wyatt Morrison is officially part of your family. Morrison, his new last name, earned in blood and choice. That night, Laurel brought a cake, chocolate, with Welcome Home Wyatt written in frosting. They ate it in his hospital room. Nora got frosting on her nose. Ironside told terrible jokes. Laurel laughed so hard she snorted. Family. Real family. On day 10, the doctors cleared him for discharge. The Iron Ravens were waiting, but this time there was no convoy, no parade, just the people who mattered. Ironside helped him into the truck. Nora climbed in beside him. Laurel drove. The ride to the Morrison house was quiet, peaceful. When they pulled into the driveway, Wyatt saw it. The same 2-story house, the same crowded bikes, but now it felt different. Now it felt like home. They helped him inside, up the stairs, to his room. Nora's drawings still covered the walls. The bed was made. Fresh flowers on the desk. Rest, Laurel said. Dinner's in 2 hours. I'm making pot roast. After they left, Wyatt sat on the bed, pulled the prospect patch from his pocket. He looked at it for a long time. Then he set it on the desk. Not ready to sew it on yet, but ready to keep it close. The weeks that followed fell into rhythm. School started. Wyatt was nervous, but Jenna from English class remembered her offer. She helped him catch up, introduced him to other kids. He made friends, slowly, carefully, but they stuck. Physical therapy continued, building strength, healing properly this time. At home, Ironside taught him to cook, to change oil, to use power tools without losing fingers. Flint taught him motorcycle maintenance in the garage. Rev taught him to throw a proper punch. Each lesson a brick, building something Wyatt couldn't quite see yet, but could feel taking shape. 8 weeks after leaving the hospital the second time, Ironside called him downstairs. The living room was full of iron ravens. Tonight, Ironside said, we ride to Blackstone. The club's voting on whether to officially bring you in as a prospect. Full ceremony. Wyatt's mouth went dry. You've been training, learning. But there's a difference between carrying the patch and earning it in front of the whole chapter. Tonight you earn it. The ride to Blackstone felt different. Wyatt on the back of Ironside's bike. The whole family came. Laurel and Nora in the truck. The club brothers forming a convoy. The bar was packed. Every member of the Iron Ravens Denver chapter. Some from neighboring towns, all gathering for this. Wyatt's hands shook as he climbed off the bike. Inside, they'd cleared space in the center, a circle of men in leather. At the head, Ironside stood with a vest draped over his arm. Not the prospect one Wyatt had been carrying. This one had the full back patch. The winged skull, Iron Ravens arched above it. Denver below, and on the front, above the heart. A name in careful stitching. Wyatt Morrison. Wyatt Reeves, Ironside called, using his old name deliberately. Step forward. Wyatt walked into the circle, every eye on him. You came to us with nothing. No family, no home, no reason to believe anyone would stand for you. But when hell came calling, you didn't run. You stepped between death and a 6-year-old girl you didn't even know. He held up the vest. This club doesn't hand out patches for charity. You earn them by showing us who you are when everything's on the line. Flint stepped forward. The question before this chapter is simple. Has this boy earned the right to wear our colors? "I," came the response. A chorus that shook the walls. Any opposed silence. Ironside stepped forward, held out the vest. Wyatt Morrison, by unanimous vote of the Iron Ravens Denver chapter, you are accepted as a prospect. This vest is yours. Wear it with honor. Learn from it with humility. And know that every man here will ride with you until you're ready for the full patch. Wyatt took the vest with trembling hands, slid it on. The weight settled on his shoulders like a promise. The room erupted. Cheers, applause, hands clapping his back. Welcome home, brother. Proud of you, kid. You earned this. Nora pushed through the crowd, threw her arms around him. You look so cool. Laurel was next. Welcome to the family. Officially. When the noise died down, Nora presented something wrapped in brown paper. I made you something. Wyatt unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a frame, and in the frame his old hoodie, the one torn and blood-stained from that night. Below it a small plaque, the uniform of a hero. Wyatt stared at it until his vision blurred. Thank you, he managed. That night after the party wound down, Wyatt found himself alone with Ironside on the bar's back patio. There's one more thing, Ironside said. Something I want to show you. They got on the bike, rode through Denver as the city settled into late-night quiet. They stopped under the Highway 15 bridge, the place where Wyatt had slept for 12 weeks. Ironside killed the engine. They stood together in the shadow of the concrete supports. Why are we here? Wyatt asked, even though he knew. Because you need to see how far you've come, and because we're not leaving other kids here alone. From his saddlebag, he pulled a bundle, blanket, food, water bottles, and a note written in Ironside's rough handwriting. If you need help, find the Iron Ravens at Blackstone Bar. Tell them Wyatt sent you. They left it tucked where Wyatt used to sleep, where someone cold and hungry and invisible might find it. You starting something here? Ironside asked. Wyatt looked at the bridge, at the life he'd left behind. Yeah, I am. Nobody else has to disappear. Ironside gripped his shoulder. Then let's make sure they don't. The ride home was quiet, peaceful. Wyatt leaned against Ironside's back and watched Denver roll by. He used to be invisible to all of it. Now he was part of it. When they pulled into the driveway, Laurel and Nora were waiting on the porch. Coffee, hot chocolate, blanket. "How'd it go?" Laurel asked. "Good," Wyatt said. "Really good." Inside, they sat around the kitchen table. Wyatt told them about leaving the care package, about wanting to help other kids. "We'll help," Nora said immediately. "I can draw posters. We can collect blankets at school." "I know people at social services," Laurel added. "We can build something, a network." Ironside nodded. "The club will back it. We've got resources, connections." Wyatt looked around the table, at his family. "Thank you for all of this." "Don't thank us yet," Ironside said with a slight smile. "You've got algebra homework and chores tomorrow. Being part of the family means pulling your weight." Wyatt laughed, actually laughed. Later, lying in his bed in his room in his house, Wyatt stared at the ceiling, at the glow-in-the-dark stars Nora had put up, at the drawings on his walls, at the vest hanging on his door with his new name stitched across it. He thought about the van, about the bullets, about the moment when he'd stopped being invisible and started being seen. He'd taken 5 bullets for a little girl he didn't know. Turns out he'd really been taking them for the family he didn't know he'd been searching for all along. 3 years later, Wyatt walked across the stage in a cap and gown. "Graduated high school with honors," Laurel cried. Nora cheered so loud she nearly lost her voice. Ironside stood in the back with the rest of the Iron Ravens. Arms crossed, face neutral, but Wyatt caught the pride in his eyes. After graduation, Wyatt enrolled in community college, studied social work, kept helping kids living in the shadows. On his 18th birthday, the Iron Ravens voted again, this time for his full patch. Wyatt Morrison became a full member, brother, family. He kept the prospect vest, though, framed it next to the torn hoodie, reminders of who he'd been and who he'd become. The program he started grew. Other clubs joined in, then churches, schools. It spread through Denver like wildfire. They called it Invisible No More. Every package included the same note: "If you need help, find the Iron Ravens. Tell them Wyatt sent you." And they came, one by one. Kids who thought they had to disappear to survive. Kids who learned, like Wyatt had, that being seen by the right people could save your life. Nora grew up, 15 now, still called Wyatt every Sunday, still drew pictures, still told everyone about the brother who stepped in front of bullets for her. On quiet mornings, Wyatt and Ironside still sat together with coffee, still talked about nothing and everything, still built the kind of relationship that didn't need words to be solid. One morning, Ironside asked, "You ever regret it? Stepping in front of that van?" Wyatt thought about it, about the pain, the fear, the scars. "No, because if I hadn't, I'd still be invisible. I'd still be that kid under the bridge thinking he didn't matter." He looked at Ironside, at the man who had become his father in all the ways that counted. "You taught me I was worth keeping. That changed everything." Ironside nodded, gripped Wyatt's shoulder. "You taught yourself that, kid. I just helped you see it." Later that day, Wyatt got a call. A kid named Marcus, 15, living under a different bridge, found one of the care packages, wanted to know if the note was real. Wyatt grabbed his vest, his phone, his keys. "Tell them Wyatt sent you," he said, "and I'm on my way," because nobody else had to disappear. Not on his watch, not anymore. Wyatt Reeves had been invisible for 15 years, but Wyatt Morrison made sure every forgotten kid knew they could be seen. And that made all the difference.